Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good day from wherever you are joining us today. And thank you all so much for joining us for the Beauty and EV Ready Communities to Accelerate Adoption webinar in partnership with IREC. My name is Simbiat Yusuf Muller. I am the events manager at Forth and we welcome you. Before I pass it along to our moderator, Stu Green, our policy manager at Forth, we have a few updates and reminders from the Forth team. Attendees, we ask that you submit all of your questions via the attendee chat. We will be getting through the Q&A during the Q&A portion of the webinar shortly after all of the presentations today. We will also be sharing with you all the webinar slides as well as the recording shortly after the webinar to follow conversations to follow with our speakers. We have an amazing panelist conversation for you all today. And for those of you that might be just tuning in and you've never interacted with us, we are Forth. We are on a mission to electrify transportation. We bring people together to create solutions that reduces barrier to access for electric transportation. Our work is done in 5 focus areas: policy advocacy, access to electric cars, access to charging, access to emerging modes, and events and partnerships. If you would like to learn more about Forth and the work we do, you can find the information on our website, and the link will be dropped shortly. And we wanted to take this opportunity to thank our members and sponsors. The work we do, such as this webinar, would not be possible without the support that they provide. If you would like to learn more about our membership program or sponsorship opportunities, please reach out to our membership and partnership manager, Rachel Havenkamp. Email is on screen, and we will include more information in the webinar recap. Forth brings a great group of people together, so you definitely want to learn more about our membership opportunities and what we offer. And that's talking about membership and sponsorship and all the things we do at Forth. This is your time to save big. We have the early adopter rates going for the Roadmap Conference currently. And we also have another opportunity when you bring your team. Conferences are fun when you bring your team together. So we currently have other opportunities and additional discounts for large groups. More information will be dropped on that in the chat. If you want to bring up to 100 people, for instance, there's additional savings that you can have. We have discounts from 2 to 5 people, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, and 20 plus. If you would like to learn more about how to purchase, there's a link dropped to a form for you to bring your team and join us in Detroit this October. And with that, I am going to invite Stu, our moderator, to come up and join me on screen so we can get the webinar started and you all can get the information you came here for. Stu?
Hey, thank you, Simbi. Hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the webinar, Building EV-Ready Communities to Accelerate Adoption. Just a quick note, moderator's privilege, why are we doing this? I think as we are on this journey of electrifying everything in our communities, it's really important to make sure that everyone has access to charging, and making sure that we have that access is essential, I think, for keeping things inclusive and developing a sustainable transportation system in the future. We all understand that EVs offer a pretty significant cost savings for lower fueling and maintenance expenses, and this is especially beneficial for lower income households. But increasing access to charging really helps shore up our public investments in charging infrastructure and make sure that we're serving all communities more effectively. So how do we want to build EV-ready communities? There's a lot of different ways that we can make our communities more EV-ready, and preparing for that future can happen on many different levels. For example, one level is really community-based. looking at government operations. And today we'll be talking about Charging Smart, a program that really helps address the community level preparation. Also looking at where people live and helping ensure that people can charge at home. We know that this is pretty straightforward in single family homes, but for multifamily housing and for apartments, it's much more complicated. So we'll have a look at that today as well. Also at the workplace, another really good opportunity to increase charging to better serve a full spectrum of our community. And then lastly, we're going to have a sense of getting a better understanding of what does the future need to really kind of sharpen our focus on what we're going to need to do in the upcoming years to make sure that we're ready for this EV future. So today we're going to look at these 4 programs. These are all programs that Forth works with very closely. And I will grab these bios here for my compatriots and let's see. Okay, so today we will be joined by Thea Yagerlener, Senior Program Manager for IREC. Thea implements all aspects of the Charging Smart program, a national technical assistance and designation program that helps communities address barriers and accelerate adoption. And speakers, please turn on your webcams as I introduce you. Also joined by Anna Guida, Program Manager at Forth, who serves as Program Manager on our Access to Charging team. Anna's current work centers on addressing barriers and providing solutions for EV charging at multifamily housing. Also joined by Michael Ryer, Senior Program Associate here at Forth, who's working on the workplace charging team, providing assistance to organizations as they adopt EV infrastructure. And lastly, but not least, Aradhana Gahlaut, Clean Transportation Associate from Rocky Mountain Institute. Aradhana is a Senior Associate in the Carbon-Free Transportation team, where she supports analytical decision-making on transportation electrification and sustainable mobility strategies using a data-centric approach. So with that, I will give our icebreaker question and give everyone a quick opportunity to respond. But folks who are on the call here, maybe in the order I introduced you, what outreach strategy are you most excited for in regard to charging resources and incentives?
Yeah, I can kick things off. Yeah, I'm a big fan of leveraging organizations and associations that have existing relationships with commercial property owners, whether that's 2030 districts, Main Street associations, downtown development authorities, and having local governments leverage those existing relationships to plug in information on either existing incentives or webinars and workshops to share information about strategies.
Awesome. Thanks, Thea. Michael?
Yeah, I'd say I'm most excited for information sessions. It's a great way to answer questions quickly and get in touch with any frequently asked questions. So that's mine. Thank you.
Thanks. Anna?
Yeah, I'm excited about kind of the work we're doing with creating resource hubs for multifamily folks, so they have a one-stop shop to learn about EV charging, the basics, and then move through the process through installation, and then kind of echoing Thea and Michael, just technical assistance sessions and making spaces for people to ask questions to learn more.
Great, thanks. And Aradhana?
Thanks, Stu. I'm excited for content and resources that help folks connect the dots between all the tools and data that are available and how to use them in their day-to-day planning activities.
All right, super. Well, I look forward to hearing everybody's presentation. Thea, I will hand it over to you to begin. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, I might call in a bit of help here to track down my slides. Is that something someone on the call might be able to help me with? While that's going on in the background, hi everyone, my name's Thea Yagerlener. I'm a Senior Program Manager at IREC, as Stu said, primarily working on Charging Smart. A little bit more about IREC. It's the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. We primarily work on accelerating the adoption of a clean energy future. We work across 3 main branches of work. Our local initiatives branch, which Charging Smart is under, where we provide technical assistance and support to local governments across the US and Puerto Rico. We also have a workforce development branch, as well as a regulatory regulations branch as well. Charging Smart is a free technical assistance and national recognition program that helps local governments adopt and accelerate the adoption of EV charging. It is based off of an existing program called SolSmart. SolSmart also provides free technical assistance to local governments and has over 550 designated communities so far. Charging Smart takes a lot of these best practices. SolSmart and Charging Smart are under an umbrella called Energy Ready. Energy Ready helps there be parallels between SolSmart and Charging Smart. So if you go to the Energy Ready website, that's actually where you can sign up for Charging Smart. We don't have my slides up to share what that website is and a little QR code, but I'll drop it in the chat after I'm done speaking. Charging Smart has many programs. I mentioned it's a national has many partners. I mentioned it's a national program. It's run by IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. We also have partners of ICMA, the Great Plains Institute, and Forth, as well as NARC and RMI. And then we have a number of regional and local partners to help bring local expertise on EVs, including Clean Cities coalitions and EVNOR. We also have industry advisory partners like EVgo, ChargePoint, and Tesla that have helped inform the best practices included in the Charging Smart program to make sure that they're high impact and reflective of industry standards. I mentioned that Charging Smart is a designation program. So there are 3 tiers of designations, bronze, silver, and gold, that are currently available for local governments to achieve. Charging Smart covers a broad range of categories. We have 6 categories covering planning, so activities like including EVs and planning documents, creating plans of where EV chargers should go. Regulation, which is kind of the protein on the plate of Charging Smart. That's where we cover land use regulations like permitting, zoning, and building codes. This is where we see a lot of barriers come up for EV charging, and it's really high impact to address. We also have a category on utility engagement, so looking at where are there strategic collaborations that can happen with local utilities. Education and incentives, which cover how are we sharing information with different groups in the community around EV charging, and providing incentives to help encourage the adoption of EV charging as well. We have a category on shared mobility, which covers things like school buses, public transit, micromobility, and then another category on government operations, which looks internally at what's going on with municipalities on municipal fleets, installing EV chargers directly, and so forth. Specific best practices that Charging Smart covers related to topics that are covered in this workshop are helping commercial property owners adopt EVs and EV charging directly, creating financial incentives for EVs and EV charging, also for commercial properties, installing chargers in the rights of way or for multifamily housing, and workplace charging specifically at municipal properties. So all things that we're happy to help you with. Through Charging Smart, communities have access to expert technical assistance, high impact resources, and so forth. Again, through Charging Smart, we're really helping leverage existing staff capacity, make the most use of your time, and help communities adopt high impact actions. So I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat of where you can sign up. In addition, it sounds like in the follow-up, we'll share some slides so you can see more about what I was talking about. And with that, I will hand it back over to Stu.
All right, thank you, Thea. Appreciate it so much. We work very closely with Charging Smart, and we think it's a fantastic program, and we'll definitely share the slides out there. I think they're pretty important and have a lot of really useful resources. Now we're going to transition over to Anna Guida to come and talk about charge at home. If you have any questions about the Charging Smart program, you can put those into the chat and we will circle back at the end. Okay, Anna, let's see if I think we got here. Here we are. Now this is right. Take it away.
Thanks, Stu, and thanks, Thea. Yes, my name is Anna Guida. I'm a program manager here at Forth, and I lead up the Charge at Home project, which, as you can see on the screen, we focus on multifamily EV charging. And our audience is mostly the decision makers at multifamily properties, so the developers, owners, property managers, investors, as well as residents. And our whole goal is to provide education and free resources. So I want to start off with the case for EV charging at multifamily properties. EV charging or EV ownership is on the rise. And by 2030, according to the Edison Institute, EVs will make up about 50% of sales, and that is not slowing down. Essentially, EV drivers want to charge where they park. If you think about EV charging, it takes a little longer than it does with gas. So the places you spend the most amount of time, aka home and at work, make a lot of sense. EV drivers will make decisions about where they live based on access to EV charging. Related to the bullet above, the convenience factor is just huge. A great consideration for commercial as well is that potential tenants may favor commercial options that provide EV charging due to that convenience, and it just will be an expected amenity in the near future. So according to the National Multifamily Housing Council, which is our multifamily partner on Charge at Home, approximately 40 million renters live in 23 million apartment homes. And a stat that we like to share, this is from CBRE in a 2025 article was cited, that 80% of EV charging takes place at home, but only 5% of multifamily housing offers EV charging, and approximately a third of Americans live in multifamily, renters live in multifamily. So, there's some disparity there. All that EV charging it's much easier to charge at single family than is a multifamily. 75% of apartment households have at least one vehicle, and most drivers will prefer convenience and affordability, which you can find at home charging, over charging speed. Okay, I want to get into some barriers, some high-level barriers and solutions for both existing and new builds. And if you ever want to go deeper into this information, you can reach out to us here at Forth, and we will dive into the details with you and also share more information about our resources. But at a high level, cost is a huge barrier at existing properties. It is very expensive to retrofit buildings, and that's not lost on us. Limited electrical capacity can require new upgrades. Internet connectivity is really important for network chargers. Parking is constrained in most cases. Utility services upgrades can take a long time. And then lack of knowledge about systems that really support existing buildings, like load management systems. Some solutions, education for multifamily decision makers, having conversations, getting out there and talking about solutions, as well as providing great technical assistance, which I know many folks on this call, that's what they're all about. Using level 1 and low level power options is a great solution at existing builds to work with the limited electrical capacity. Utilizing old EV load management systems at the panel or building level, or load managed chargers can really reduce costs, or utilizing power sharing in charging circuits. The next, we're going to talk a little bit about new build considerations. So some of the barriers for new builds, there's, I would say, less barriers than at existing, because you can plan ahead with new builds if you're thinking about EV charging and the demand. So a barrier is uncertainty of ROI. Why will I make this investment? What will it look like for me? Will it pay off? From the owner developer standpoint. There's lack of knowledge about EV projection for the next 5 to 10 years. Lack of knowledge about load management systems and other systems that make EV charging possible. Codes vary across jurisdictions and contractors who have knowledge about EV charging. Solutions, again, education, technical assistance, load management systems at building and panel level, or load managed chargers, and then prioritizing EV readiness, right? So even if you're not ready to install charging for every single unit, if you can get your parking set up at a space where there's infrastructure in place, that'll save you a ton of money down the line. So it's just something everyone should be thinking about, especially folks with new builds. Okay, I'm gonna kind of go through quickly. I have 5 minutes left. But some great solutions for multifamily charging are level 1 and low level 2, as well as level 2 charging. So low level charging options work really great in assigned parking configurations. So you can as you can imagine, like at a single family home, if you just use a normal 120 volt outlet, you just can plug in the wall and kind of slowly charge overnight and usually meet the charging need you need. So lots of new buildings have outlets in garages, so taking advantage of those, it reduces the upfront cost for property owners to use low-level charging options. It allows folks to have the same kind of convenience as single-family homes, which is great. There are smart level 1 outlets that do access controls, can do revenue generation features, and can do remote monitoring for folks who are using that charger. So there's a lot of great technology out there. So if you're interested in learning more about level 1, I encourage you to get online or reach out to us. We have a lot of great EV charging companies that are doing great work in the low level space. And then, oh yes, a huge one is that low level usually satisfies resident need, right? If you have a fully charged car and your commute is 30 miles a day, or within the range, like a lower range like that, you can definitely plug in overnight and be okay. Next slide. Level 2 works for unassigned and assigned parking configurations at multifamily. Network level 2 chargers have tons of features, access controls, payment management portals, hooked up to apps. You can monitor your charger. You can set up idle fees to help with charger turnaround if you have a lower number of chargers, right? But one level 2 charger can serve multiple vehicles. Keep that in mind. And you don't need to have a level 2 charger for every unit because of that reason. Again, we can go into more detail about different charging solutions. Just reach out to us. A huge thing to think about with preparing for the future is EV readiness. I already kind of went into that, but just when you're doing, when you're working on a new property, put it into your plans to make sure you have electrical infrastructure ready to go for when you need increased charging at your property, right? So you can start small in terms of actual chargers, but if the infrastructure is there, it really paves the way for success in the future and will reduce costs, dramatically reduce costs. That's called EV readiness. Okay, what influences multifamily decision makers? Great incentives, mandates obviously influence folks, understanding the value proposition and ROI expectations, understanding property or the technology, if residents are requesting it or tenants are requesting it, that will definitely influence folks at the decision-making level to consider EV charging. And also just the understanding that it makes your property more competitive, right? So if folks know they can choose between 2 comparable properties that one offers charging, that's just going to be more attractive to residents and to tenants. Okay, so I only have a few minutes left, but Charge at Home is a great resource. It's www.chargeathome.org. We have some really great market segmented EV installation toolkits for both new and existing properties. We have a project builder tool. It's in beta mode that actually has an ROI calculator once you put your unique inputs in, you can play around with to kind of show like what your ROI would be over the course of a certain amount of years based on what you're charging for electricity and what your project looks like and incentives. We are developing project case studies, a lot of great multifamily folks, as well as EV charging companies. We have a glossary of terms, and we also have resident empowerment resources. And the final thing I want to talk about is our roundtable sessions. We have one next Thursday, the 22nd, where we just talk about all topics multifamily. We'll go really deep into existing properties or new properties. We'll talk about different charging solutions, but they're really a space for everybody. So I believe that's been dropped in the chat for people to learn more about our roundtables. Project Builder tool. And then here's just a few resources, and it kind of segues into eval, but Charge at Work is a great resource as well, chargeatwork.org. And yeah, that's what I've got for all of you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Anna. Folks, if you have any questions about Charge at Home while they're fresh on your mind, feel free to put those in the chat. And we'll call up Michael to talk about eval. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you so much, Stu, and thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Michael Ryer. I'm a Senior Program Associate at Forth, and my team has been building the eval certification program for the last year and a half. So for our learning objectives, I'll start with the big question: what's the importance of workplace charging? Then I'll do a quick overview of eval, so you all have some context to what this program does. Next, I'll cover how eval engages with and helps bolster the workplace charging programs of businesses and communities. I'll also cover our best outreach strategies, since consistent, steady communication is very key in developing a certification program. And lastly, I'll go over some case studies to give you an image of the businesses and organizations that have attained the certification so far. So let's dive into the importance of workplace charging first. Workplaces are the second most preferred location for EV owners to charge. Additionally, 30% of Americans do not have access to workplace or home charging that they will need in an EV-heavy future. Essentially, workplace charging is a very worthwhile investment for employers, and the mantra I like to use for it is, if you build it, they will come. In the interest of business owners and managers, chargers put a business on the map, literally. Online trackers of practical charging locations like ChargePoint or PlugShare usually list the best charging locations along with port counts and availability. EV owners usually use these websites when they plan their daily routes or routines, and businesses can take advantage of this by deploying chargers, opening them to the public, and charging a small fee to generate a return on investment. Of course, we always encourage free workplace charging, though, for employees. The presence of workplace charging also improves hiring and retention from employees. A recent IBM survey shows that about 68% of global employees would rather work for a sustainability-minded company rather than for one that makes no effort or investment towards clean business practices at all. Workplace charging also increases commercial property value by as much as 15%. EV charging also lowers Scope 3 emissions or any emissions that occur through an organization's value chain. Lower emissions enhance ESG or environmental social governance scores, which can make obtaining federal grants or financial awards even easier and attract more passionate talent over time. And of course, the presence of EV charging on site reduces range anxiety for employees, and that helps individuals save money in the long run every day, which further adds to the motivation to stay at the current workplace that provides these benefits. So, what is the eval program? In essence, eval is a clean commuting program that helps organizations and communities reduce emissions pollution from employee commutes. Eval also provides national recognition and technical assistance to organizations that support the adoption of clean transportation, and ultimately, the certification indicates the availability of clean transportation options for staff at a workplace. So for comparison's sake, the LEED certification indicates that a building is very energy efficient. Meanwhile, eval indicates that employees will have an easier time utilizing and affording electric mobility options. Here's a quick preview of the tiers that certified organizations are assigned upon completing the application. And you will need a minimum of 15 points to certify for bronze, max for platinum at 100 points. And please note that organizations can apply for recertification at any time to increase point or a tier total. So why certify? Eval is the only nationally recognized workplace charging certification. It can enhance real estate value and inspire partners to help shape the future of smart mobility alongside you. And by becoming eval certified, you're joining this amazing group that is growing, a community of sustainability leaders, many of whom are listed on this slide. Overall, it's a fantastic means to network and bolster your organization's sustainability portfolio. So, how do we help enable communities to build EV charging programs? The overarching goal here is to create familiarity. For many people and organizations, electric vehicles are new, they're intimidating, and they're pretty confusing. The prospect of integrating them into everyday life is pretty rife with questions about how they can replace the gas-powered cars that folks are used to. So we provide a handful of tools, we break down the confusion and dispel the myths, because the reality is EVs are easy to use, they're practical, and they save you a lot of money over time. So to do this, our team participates in webinars like this one today. so that topics can be actively talked about in one sitting, and so that team members can answer questions and utilize EV verbiage in real time. This kind of communication usually does wonders for addressing confusion head-on, and again, in my opinion, confusion, misinformation, alongside financial constraints are some of the primary hindrances towards widespread EV adoption. Our team also provides a number of templates, surveys, and forms that help organizational managers get themselves and their employees more familiar with the process of adopting EV infrastructure into their own work sites. The eval website also contains a directory of local providers and installers of EV supply equipment, and this list is regularly updated, and providers do actively reach out to us so we can include their information for later reference to organizations that are interested in having chargers installed. Also available on site are employee education resources, and these include a breakdown of different types of chargers and charging ports available, the rates and mileage one can expect from visiting a charging station, and the advantages of adopting an EV into everyday life, such as lower maintenance costs, daily savings on gas. And this collateral is meant to be very simplistic, but also effective at addressing many frequently asked questions and busting myths that tend to proliferate around EV charging. The eval site also has several pieces of collateral oriented around best implementation practices, and these serve as general guidelines for how to approach installation and what pricing and timelines to expect. So, like I said, one of our main goals is to consistently create familiarity with EVs and their upkeep. So to do this, we need strong communication and effective outreach, and here's how we do that so far. We host regular information sessions that happen each month. These topics cover what the previous slides have, with an added emphasis on how to easily approach and go through the certification process itself. We engage in follow-ups and add FAQs regularly for clarity. We're also usually engaged in technical assistance via email, phone calls, or Zoom meetings, and we're always happy to answer any questions regarding pricing, how people can go towards implementation of a charging, how to attain certain permits or rebates, or even how to get in touch with a local electrician to gauge what electrical grid upgrades need to be implemented before proceeding. We also pride ourselves in setting up events where certified employers can discuss ideas in a roundtable style format. We're also very grateful to be able to rely on networks and efforts of our partners, Plug in America, the Electrification Coalition, and EV Noir. And sharing ideas alongside these partners helps us ensure that our strategies are not being created in a silo. Additionally, the eval certification is tied into CalStart's Charge at Work program, which helps employers understand factors such as timeline, implementation costs for future worksite projects. This site also contains the Charge at Work pledge, which is a non-binding free pledge, and representatives who sign the pledge gain an extra point on the eval certification. So this cross-coordination helps organizations and their employers comfortably acclimate to this workplace charging industry, while also helping CalStart and Forth engage in outreach collaboratively. And last bit on the agenda here, I wanted to highlight a hotel, a city, and a school district that have made phenomenal progress in developing workplace charging programs alongside their fleet. Hotel Marcel in New Haven, Connecticut is a business pursuing complete carbon neutrality in their daily operations. Built into their 120 parking spots are 13 charging ports that help their employees with EVs save around $80 per month that would otherwise go to gas expenses. Hotel Marcel routinely utilizes their portfolio and certified status to draw attention to events around sustainability that they host on their premises. And employees routinely vocalize how much they enjoy close access to charging every day. The city of Phoenix in Phoenix, Arizona has also heavily invested into workplace charging at several of their 22 work sites. The ratios of parking spots to charging ports are shown here. That they vary immensely, as any city would, but eval's program collaboration closely with the city of Phoenix has helped us develop a more efficient route of encompassing larger cities like this, while also giving them representation. And lastly, the school district of the city of Pontiac has deployed 11 ports in 300 spots. They're also platinum certified. They're advanced to the point that they have wait lists, accessibility features, and the program has given them representation. And overall, recognizing ambitious employers like these organizations is a big way that we conduct outreach. We recognize them and put them in platinum spotlights. With that being said, that is all the content that I had. Here are some next steps. There's a list of our website, our link. Feel free to follow us on social media. And thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Michael. If you all have any questions about eval, please go ahead, drop those in the chat, and we'll circle back in a few minutes. And I'd love to invite Aradhana to come up and speak a little bit about forecasting the future.
Thanks, Stu. See if I can get these slides to work. Yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Aradhana Gahlaut, and I'm going to pivot the conversation a little bit and share with you the techniques that local governments and communities can take to proactively plan for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And we'll be highlighting the tools and data that can be used to expand charging access. Let's start with a quick overview of what we'll cover today. We'll talk about the growing demand for EV charging, the planning challenges communities face, and how new data tools, specifically a tool that's available from RMI and through Charging Smart that you heard about earlier, called the Grid Up Accelerating Charging in Communities, or GWAC tool. And we'll talk about how these can support smarter planning at the local level. Now, just to set the stage, you can see from this slide that the EV transition, as we all know, is well underway. Over the past 5 years alone, the number of battery electric vehicles in the US has more than quadrupled, and EV charging has grown exponentially as well. This shows that sales of electric vehicles in the US continue to climb and that charging infrastructure is expanding in response. However, this growth still falls short of what is needed in the future as well as now. In fact, by 2030, we'll need nearly 15 times more charging infrastructure than we have today. I'll let that number sink in for a moment. That's just 5 years away from now. This is a massive scale up, and it's not just about adding a large quantity of chargers, it's also about putting them in the right places, as you just heard about in our previous presentations. Most of this demand will be concentrated in areas with high home ownership, high density, such as large urban centers and places with a lot of multifamily housing, as well as highway corridors to support long distance travel. Now, some of these have more significant barriers to implementation than others. Most chargers today are at single family homes with private garages. Now, while that demand will continue to rise, true universal access will only be provided in this transition by expanding availability to renters, multifamily housing residents, and others who cannot rely on home charging. Recent work that we've seen, such as that by Energy Innovation Policy and Technology, has found that significant charging gaps exist for multifamily housing residents across US cities, regardless of how encouraging that specific city is of EV adoption. Now, local governments will have a vital role to play in this expansion. We know that when local government and communities act to support EV adoption, the benefits ripple out broadly, and we've seen this across the US and globally. These benefits include to lower transportation costs, cleaner air, and more resilient infrastructure. Now, communities need support to get ahead of this demand curve that we saw in a slide before. The need is clear. EV demand is rising. There are economic opportunities in electric mobility. Utilities are taking note of the need to upgrade the grid. And the opportunity exists to use all of this to update local planning and zoning laws and unlock grants and public private partnerships to financially support the transition. But how do communities and localities actually go about doing this? This is where data and tools become essential. planners and policymakers need to know when, where, and how much EV charging demand is going to come online, and they need to know this well ahead of time. With this foresight, communities can avoid costly grid upgrades, reduce delays, and ensure wide access to charging. And that brings us to a key solution that we wanted to highlight, which is Grid Up Accelerating Charging in Communities, or the GUAC tool. Now, this tool provides granular location-specific forecasts for EV charging demand through 2035. And what that means is it gives you an estimate of the number of charging ports and other EV charging demand metrics at the most granular level here that is available is the census block group level, and provides that through 2035 for multiple scenarios, as we'll see in a slightly zoomed out version of this. Now, this can be a game changer for local planning because it allows you to look at hyper-local estimates of EV charging ports that would be needed in the future, peak load, and daily energy consumption. And this data, when overlaid with other information such as demographic data, vehicle miles traveled, and traffic patterns, can really help identify where these needs are most critical and where investment is necessary. Now, this tool is freely available currently at gridup.rmi.org, and it provides forecasts, as I said, down to the census block group level. Please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone at RMI if you'd like support in accessing it. Now, tools like GUAC can help communities anticipate charging needs and give regulators and utilities the confidence that they need to invest in future demand. This aligns infrastructure investments and grid planning with what the community will actually need. This data can be used in local planning efforts to estimate the scale of future charging demand, inform transportation program design, and engage and build buy-in with utilities and local decision makers. This also allows communities to prioritize locations, whether it's for curbside charging in dense neighborhoods to support multifamily housing residents, or shared electric mobility or micromobility programs in lower income areas to provide access to the benefits of electric transport without the economic burden of buying an EV. So the applications of this tool are not limited just to EV charger program design. All of this together can lead to smarter, more efficient, and locally relevant siting decisions. Just to wrap up here, communities are on the front lines of the EV transition. And with the right data and tools, you can lead the way in building accessible, resilient charging infrastructure that serves everyone in the community. Thank you for your time today, and I'll pass it back to Stu for Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Aradhana. I'll have everybody turn your cameras back on if that sounds good, and we will take a few questions here before the end. First off, a question from the chat we had, are any of the panelists working on resources for fleet transition? And I know that there's at least a few resources out there. Why don't we go in the order we started and start with Thea and see if you want to speak to Charging Smart and support for fleet transition.
Yeah, I will say that both Forth and RMI are Charging Smart partners, but through Charging Smart, which is a technical assistance and designation program, we do cover fleet transition for municipalities. And if you are looking for technical assistance for that, definitely look at Charging Smart. In terms of specific tools that are available or reports, I might leave that to the other panelists to speak to.
Anyone else? Anna or Michael?
I can build more, though. There are existing tools like the Drive tool from the Electrification Coalition, existing tools like the A-Fleet tool, so we can definitely assist you with using those tools to help start to analyze fleet transition and then connect you with resources on actually purchasing your first EVs.
Yeah, like Michael, have you had any eval certifications that have also used that as an opportunity to pivot their fleet?
We have, yes. And to clarify too, the eval certification, if vehicles are used for like fleet purposes exclusively, that doesn't usually count towards a certification. It's more for if it's covering employees' personally owned vehicles and also semi-open to the public. But I can definitely look into the collateral and see if we have specifics on that. And I'll put my email into the chat. I'm always happy to look into that more and provide more data in the future. But that's a great question. Thank you.
All right, great. I'll move on to the next question unless Anna or Aradhana, you want to tag on anything there. No? Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have an access to cars team that works with fleets and stuff like that we're happy to connect folks with here at Forth.
Okay, great. Next question, is public charging a viable alternative to multifamily, specifically in dense urban environments that are already built out? So adding charging can be a challenge. It's a question from Greg Hansen there. What do you think? Is public charging a substitute for multifamily resources?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think all charging is good charging. I don't know if it serves. I wouldn't say it's a substitute. I think if multifamily properties have parking, they should have charging, just to meet the need, especially with the uptick of EV charging with the projections over the next several years. So I wouldn't say it's a replacement, but I think that public charging is awesome and there should be more of it. But having charging access at home, if there's parking, there's not a big substitute for that.
Yeah, I can just build on that. I think agree with everything Anna said. And in a lot of cases where parking is an issue and a limitation, we've seen that public charging and specifically curbside charging can be the only option for many communities. And so it is critical to be looking for programs and ways to collaborate with either local planning agencies or utilities on building those kind of programs.
Great. Yeah, I think another observation just about multifamily versus public charging is that the dwell times tend to be very different and the use patterns are very different. And trying to maximize that dwell time can really lower costs of the project if that makes sense for the users. So agree that all charging is good charging. Okay, let's maybe switch to another question. If any of you have stories or case studies where a commercial property owner was hesitant at first to consider charging resources, but then became a champion, is there any easy case studies? You don't need to mention any names.
It's not commercial, and I'm trying not to mention any names because we're developing this case study right now. But it was multifamily with folks where the setup where it was at a university for professors, and while the professors were at the university, they would buy into their living arrangement, and part of their agreement was to have EV charging accessible for them while they lived there. They had some level 2 charging installed that was kind of defunct, wasn't working. So the HOA kind of initiated advocating for their residents to make sure that they were fulfilling their agreement. And then they ended up using a low level charging option, which was able to provide charging access for every single unit. I think there was like 123 units for a very low cost. They leveraged some incentives. It was in California, and were able to cover, I think, like $180,000 in installation costs. And now that specific university property is very gung-ho about charging and will invite people onto their property to see their charging project to talk about it. So that's just an example of low level being awesome and kind of shifting the gears from always having to provide higher charging levels, right? So it's lower cost for the property owner, and it's also better access regularly for the resident, which is kind of cool. It gives them that single family feel. So we'll be publishing that case study in a couple of weeks. And when it's out, we'll probably do a presentation on it. So stay tuned.
Oh, great. Thanks, Anna. I think that's a really important point of just thinking about the cost of that increased power and also the increased maintenance and other requirements that come along with increased power, and how there is really an important home for lower level charging, level 1 and low level 2. So thinking kind of like a stepping stone from that, Michael, I might check in with you here. But when a property owner is evaluating their situation, what misconceptions do you find that they commonly have about EV charging, and how do you help address those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the number one concern that usually comes up is that if they have an EV park, if they have any parking spot reserved for electric vehicles, that's going to take up business. That's going to detract from people who already come and then park. Usually that doesn't actually play out. Parking spots are seldom utilized 100%. And actually, if there is an EV ready parking spot, that attracts traffic that otherwise would not be there. And like I mentioned earlier, that usually inspires local EV owners to redirect their usual routes to go and charge while they're grocery shopping or while they're actually at work or doing other tasks. Furthermore, there's a lot of anxiety over permitting, but that's usually a quick process that takes just a couple months. Same thing for accessing rebates. It's just kind of about finding a good program that knows its way around. But usually it's all very addressable. But I'd say the main one is anxiety over taking up parking space. But again, it usually has a really phenomenal ROI, and trenching can be a bit complicated, but nothing a local electrician cannot handle. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think we've seen some anxiety around permitting in a lot of levels, and I think that's one of the things that Charging Smart project does really well, is trying to look at those barriers and try to smooth things out. Thea, would you be willing to offer any words about some of the results we've seen from Charging Smart communities and effects of getting designated?
Yeah, the anxiety about the permitting process taking a while can be real, and Charging Smart really helps local governments and municipalities streamline their permitting processes. Many things we're looking at is having clarity and transparency in what requirements are, really evaluating what level of reviews need to happen on permits that come in, so they're not going through a lengthy discretionary review process, and then making sure that building codes are updated. Regulations that are applying to EVs make sense. Things that we look for that are high impact are even just posting information online about what the steps are for permitting. What permits need to be submitted, who's reviewing those, what that timeline is, and what information needs to be provided on those. Having that information can really shorten the timeline for having those approvals. And then we look at having local governments adopt high impact things like permitting EV chargers as an accessory use by right, making sure that that's not requiring a discretionary review and that can be administratively approved. Other really high impact actions as well, more just on the process side. So being transparent on what timelines are for permitting to help relieve some of that anxiety, just saying that this takes 5 days or 20 days or 40 days, depending on more complex applications. Having a specific staff contact, so folks have a real person to talk to, a clear lead for EV charging permits in case there are questions that come up, that people know where to go to have those questions answered, things like that.
Great. Thank you, Thea. Seeing another question in the chat here for Aradhana. Could you share more about how a clean energy advocate could use findings from GridUp to encourage their utility to start expanding capacity? Great question.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Anna. I think one of the most straightforward ways to do this would be for the advocate to, one, get in touch with RMI so that they can get the data in the right format for their application, because we do have it currently at the census tract, census block group levels, but we can also do custom geographies. And once that data is available, two metrics that could be particularly important are the number of charging ports that would be required, say in 2030, right? And then the charging peak demand, which would be the daily hourly peak from EV charging, and how that increases over the next 5 to 10 years. If there already is a rate case going on for a utility, so this would differ in different scenarios and how that conversation is actually proceeding. But the advocate could use that information to highlight areas where large increases in peak demand and number of ports are going to be seen in the next 5 to 10 years. If hosting capacity maps are available publicly from your utility, it is a little intensive, but fairly easy GIS application to overlay those maps and see where hosting capacity is actually already low compared to where peaks are going to be high anyway in the next 5 years, and highlight and encourage the utility to think about proactive planning and capacity expansion in those areas.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we are nearing the end of our time here, but I want to ask one more question. Today we've taken a little bit of a dive into making our communities more EV ready, especially looking at commercial and forecasting ahead to what the future is going to hold for us. So last question for each of you, in whatever order you like. Can you speak briefly to why is it important to think about an EV ready mindset? I'll start with Anna. Yeah,
go. I've said it already, but I mean, outside of just the importance of transitioning away from fossil fuels, from like the property owner mindset, from it's just staying competitive, like making sure that your property can support the need in the future will make sure that you're not left behind when people are making decisions about where to live and where to work. So being EV ready is the best thing you can do right now, I think, for planning. And that's just my perspective. Thank you.
Okay, let's go, Thea.
Yeah, to copy Anna's sentiment, I think it's just about being prepared for the future. We see in these EV forecasts that change is coming regardless of what's happening at different levels of the government. Change happens fast, and I think these projects do take time to figure out and time to prepare for. The time to get started is now versus waiting until you have too much demand to meet and unhappy people in businesses or in multifamily housing.
Michael?
I'd say the importance of an EV ready mindset, that's what's ultimately going to chip away at the misinformation and knowledge divides to help more people get more familiar and comfortable with their widespread adoption. If you drive an EV, share the enthusiasm. That kind of community building, that's what's going to help large scale comfort settle in and have more folks transition over to more clean transportation. Thank you.
Okay, and Aradhana, we already heard a lot of great arguments about why we need to think about the future, but in a sentence, would you wrap it up for us?
Sure. I think the EV ready mindset for me is just thinking ahead of all the barriers and making sure that the process to have access to charging or install chargers on your own is easier, less expensive, and just straightforward for residents and users.
Great. Well, thank you, panelists, and I'm going to hand it back to Simbi here for wrapping us up.
Thank you so much, Stu. Thank you all. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today and getting us ready in this conversation. And as we wrap up on this Tuesday, we want to say thank you all so much for joining us. We will be sending out a webinar recap that will include the resources that our speaker mentioned. It will also include the presentations as well as the recording. We want to say thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to bring a friend, bring a colleague to the Roadmap Conference happening October 14th through the 16th this year in Detroit, Michigan. We look forward to welcoming you all there. And if you have any additional question, please feel free to continue the dialogue offline in our recap, our speakers and moderator will be CC'd in that email. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all at Roadmap and looking forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.